Hi everyone, it's Charissa at Small and Scrappy here with you today, sharing a process video for this mixed media layout. I'm really excited to be sharing this one as I made it for a guest designer spot with UK Scrap Addicts. They asked me to join them for their mixed media theme this month, and it was perfect for an idea I'd already had using the June Mind the Scrap kits. So as you can see, I'm just starting by smushing some texture paste through this Heidi Swap word stencil. I did cut quite a bit of it out because it's took quite a while, and you get the idea. As you can see, I tend to secure my stencils by just putting a little bit of washi tape down just to make sure it doesn't bend up or anything. I find that quite useful. And here I am just starting to dry that texture paste with my heat gun. I don't do it thoroughly, I just want it to be dry enough to lay the stencil back down, as you can see I'm doing here, so I can do that little bottom section because the stencil's not quite 12 by 12. Well, it's not quite 12 inches. So yeah, just re-securing that with the washi tape, and I go on to smush some more through, and then I actually leave this one to dry overnight. I did do this layout over several sessions, so there is a bit of lighting change and whatnot throughout the video. Hopefully it doesn't bother anyone too much. Okay, and I've come back the next day, as I said, and I'm actually going over the stenciling again, this time using gesso on top of the texture paste. I wasn't quite happy with the colour of the texture paste. Mine is quite sort of grey and like gritty colour, and I just wanted the words to be a bit crisper and sort of pop from the background a bit more after I'd done the next stage. You'll sort of see what I mean, I think, when I've finished that. So again, I've cut most of that process out, and then I come back the next day again, and I am covering the background so far with some Heidi Shine in coral. Again, this came in the Mind the Scrap Mixed Media kit this month, and I've watered that down just so that it runs a bit and covers the stenciling. And I'm hoping that the words sort of resist a little bit where they've got the gesso on top. I think the texture paste is probably a bit more porous and it wouldn't have had quite the same effect. So, yeah, I'm just trying to get those words to pop out from the colour a little bit. And yeah, blotted up some of the colour just there just to make sure it was, well, not even, but blot up some of the excess. And then I come back the next day again, and the mixed media is all finally dry, so I'm just starting to choose some papers to map my photo on. Again, these are all from the Mind the Scrap kit, and I go with this sort of dark green basil initially, and I do go on to then back that onto the floral paper which you saw me with just then, which is from Crepe Paper All Heart. And you can see I've acquired a cup of tea in between shots there. My boyfriend, who's in the photo with me there, is quite good at bringing those when I'm having a long scrap session. So yeah, just backing that onto the All Heart floral there. I do take a few minutes to decide how I want that on the floral paper. Basically, I couldn't decide which ripped edge of the paper I wanted showing. I knew I wanted a ripped edge, but I couldn't decide how I wanted it placed. And what I'm doing here, I decided it kind of needs a little something behind or sort of bordering the main layout, especially where the mixed media, I've done it right to the edge. I feel like it kind of looks like it's floating off at this point, so I just sort of toy with the idea of the other papers I got in the kit, see if any of them would do to back the main layout or maybe act as a border, which is what I go with in the end. and I picked this orange paper from Paige Evans' Horizon collection. Um, and I'm not sure why I do it this way round. Again, I want a sort of ripped and distressed edge, um, but instead of doing it this way, I could have just torn off an inch strip and used that and not wasted that little bit there, but it's not that much, so I'll just try and remember that next time I want to do something like that. And again, if I hadn't done the mixed media so close to the edge, I wouldn't have had to cut a little bit off the edge of this side of the paper, but yes. I still could have done that after I stick the border down, and then I wouldn't have had to fiddle so much trying to make sure it stayed 12 by 12, but clearly I wasn't thinking about these sorts of things when I was doing it. It all works out in the end. So as I say, just cutting off about an inch or so of that orange horizon paper, and that forms part of the border. You'll see in a second I do also bring in more of that Warheart floral paper. I just feel like it needs something darker, and I kind of wanted to tie that one in a bit more on the other side. So what I'm doing with the Heidi Swap paper that's underneath my layout there, I don't actually end up using that. I kind of just had it there as a guide to keep the layout 12 by 12 while I was sticking down the border. Again, I could have thought about things more logically, but it sort of helped to keep things the right size. And there I am, just sticking that border down on the left. Again, if I'd just left myself more room in the first place, it probably would have been a lot easier. You'll see in a second this does actually end up sticking to my table on the first go, so yep. So what I end up doing, just to stop that happening again, I do flip it over in a second and just stick over the excess white card that I cut off earlier, just to cover the stickiness and make sure that border doesn't slip off again. You'd never know from the front. I do bring the photo back quite a few times throughout the layout just to check the positioning and things. And here I am just stressing the edges of that border just a little bit more. Okay, now I move on to the embellishments. So I start with this pack of words from Indigo and Ivy, and I don't really have a title in mind at this point, so I just go through them and see what works, and I do go with happy in the end. Think for a second about making it always happy or happy always, but I don't like the way the fonts mix on this particular layout. And here I'm just going through the All Heart ephemera pack, which again came in the minor scrap kits. Just auditioning a few pieces around the photo. I want to create a sort of cluster, so I'm just tucking things in, seeing what works, what fits with the vibe of the photo. I really try to make that little frame work, and it doesn't make it onto the final layout, but I do use one that has, it says love instead, and it's a bit bigger, so it just worked a bit more with the arrangement I was doing. I really like this ephemera pack, but I found that a lot of the pieces that suited the sentiment of the layout were just a bit too big, especially with so much going on in the background. So I've used a few smaller pieces and just tuck them in and around the photo. I thought that thank you ephemera there, it actually kind of looks like a receipt. I thought that was perfect for this because it says thank you for your patronage, and I think I said earlier this photo was taken at our local pub, so it just kind of fits with that. And here you can see I'm trying to make this work so that the title says happy and in love, because I really wanted the love to show on that frame, but the mix of fonts just doesn't work for me and I don't end up keeping it like that. I do like the phrase, but I feel like the love is just too small and it doesn't work as a title as a whole, which is a shame, but I do keep the happy and I keep the text showing on the frame there. Just going through a few more small pieces that I can tuck in. And now I'm moving on to pick out some of the Moxie stickers from the Mind the Scrap Mixed Media kit. I just kind of go through and pick a few shapes that I think might work. So these stickers, they actually come plain white and you can do anything you want basically to colour them. I think the image on the packet actually shows them embossed or covered in glitter. What I do is colour them with Heidi Shine, not the colour I used earlier, but a navy one. There it is. And I just go crazy, cover them all over, and I've put them on an old plastic wallet just to make sure that the spray doesn't get everywhere. I do leave these overnight to dry just because they're obviously quite wet. I'm just trying to make sure there that the colour is covering all of the shape. Okay, and that's pretty much it as far as the main arrangement goes, but I'm just starting to stick down the cluster now. I cut a few bits of this out because it's just sticking it back down pretty much how it was. I do put a few bits up on foam risers and a couple of bits down, just down flat on double-sided tape, just to give it some different layers of dimension, a bit of interest. But it pretty much stays the same. I think there's only one or two bits that move around. So you can see there all I end up moving I think is the pink flower there. So I've come back the next day and I'm just starting to tuck in those Moxie stickers which have dried. I do end up leaving them on the backing just to give them a bit more sturdiness because I want to use them as embellishments rather than stickers really. So I pick out a few shapes that I think work to tuck in with the rest of the embellishments. You can see I've also added a bit of twine to the tag that's in the cluster. That's just from my stash, and then the two little wood veneer hearts are from the Another Indigo and Ivy embellishment pack, which I do end up using a few other bits from as well, including these sequins. So they came in a pack with the sequins, the wood veneer and a few enamel hearts, which I also end up using. So I'm just going around sprinkling the sequins in various corners around the cluster. I've skipped a little bit of that because you can see what it looks like here. And I'm now sticking down the title on foam risers, again just to give it a bit more dimension and give sort of different levels of dimension to the cluster around the photo. And I'm sticking down the sequins here, and I had the bright idea of trying to use my pokey tool to hold them while I put glue on. It doesn't really work, it's not really a proper pokey tool, it's just from a little sewing kit, so I do abandon that quite quickly. But yes, I'm just sticking down the sequins here, they all stay in the same place. The Moxie stickers, as I said, I left the backing on those, and I do end up putting them on phone risers, just so they stand out a bit more with the with what's clustered around them. It was difficult to put foam risers on all of them everywhere I wanted, because obviously some of the spaces are quite thin and they don't really have room, but I just about managed and I was happy with how it turned out. Unfortunately, they probably could have done with being left for another day or two, because the Heidi Shine's still quite smudgy on them. It might just be that colour, to be honest, but I do end up with a few navy smudges on the background, which is a little bit annoying. And here I'm just coming in with those enamel hearts that I mentioned from the Indigo and Ivy pack. Just add a few more last minute sprinkly bits, and I basically just dot one in each of the sequin clusters. And now I'm just finishing off by stamping the date, and I use a navy ink to tie in the other navy in the layout, and I stamp it I think 4 times in the end. I do like the look of ghost stamping. And you can see I briefly consider adding some Heidi Shine splatters there in the navy, but I decided not to, and I'm glad I didn't. Okay, and here's some close-up shots for you. Please don't forget to pop over to the UK Scrap Addicts blog to read about how I put this together, and also look at all the fabulous inspiration that comes from the regular creative team each month. They really are fantastic, and they do a great job with their theme every month. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!